one off the couch, I guess. Anyways, on Wednesday, intelligence officials were back on Capitol Hill, this time for a hearing of the House Intelligence Committee, and the publication of the transcripts gave them plenty to discuss, particularly since just a day earlier, these same intelligence officials had insisted under oath that no classified information was in the signal chat.
Whoopsie.
Here's the Washington Post again. Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee immediately seized on those statements Wednesday morning as the same spy chiefs again took the witness stand for what was supposed to be a routine annual hearing on the biggest threats facing the United States. The calls coming from inside the House. Instead, Representative Jim Himes of Connecticut, the top Democrat on the committee, read back the previous day's testimony to Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who, along with Vice President J.D. Vance, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, and others, had participated in the group chat.
This you?
The senators had asked the officials on Tuesday whether the signal chat included information on weapons packages, targets, or timing, to which Gabbard responded that she couldn't recall, Himes noted. He then read aloud from a text message from Hegseth that was contained in the fuller transcript published Wednesday morning. And it's the same message with the F-18s, Reaper drones, all that.
Himes looked up. Do either of the directors want to reflect on their testimony yesterday? My answer yesterday was based on my recollection or the lack thereof, Gabbard said. So, less than 2 weeks ago, you were on a signal chat that had all of this information about F-18s and MQ-9 Reapers and targets on strike, and you, in that 2-week period, simply forgot that that was there? Himes asked. That's your testimony? My testimony is I did not recall the exact details of what was included there, Gabbard said. Himes then quizzed Gabbard on her familiarity with her office's own classification guidance for information after she claimed again Tuesday that the information in the signal chat was not classified. Himes read aloud from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence's classification guidance. I'm reading from your classification guidance, and the criteria is information providing indication or advance warning that the U.S. or its allies are preparing an attack. Do you recall what level your own guidance would suggest that that be classified? Himes asked. I don't have the specifics in front of me, Gabbard responded. Let me help you, Himes said. According to the guidance governing the classification criteria from Gabbard's office, such information should be classified as top secret.
Well, that's news to me. I mean, it's not like I'm the fucking national security advisor or anything, or director of national intelligence.
Yeah. So many delicious this yous in there. Not only did you say this yesterday, but like, is this your own fucking office's handbook on classified information and like what it is, how we define it?
Yeah.
So it is stuff. I'm kind of libbed up here.
I know this week has been very. It's the lib energy everyone needed. Finally, something dumb enough.
I wish these guys cared about anything else.
Yep.
In addition to this, but they don't, so I'll take it. I'll take whatever I can get.
Yeah, for the past couple of weeks, Democrats have really hemmed and hawed over whether to treat human beings like human beings,
yes,
regardless of whether or not, and in some cases did nothing wrong, but whether or not they did something wrong. Not whether they're being treated like human beings or not.
Yeah,
that was a little too touchy for them.
Immigrants get black bagged for like liking a post about Israel, I sleep. Pete Hegseth,
drunkenly
drunk dials a journalist. I wake.
Yeah, I'm glad you're awake, I guess. So, yeah, it's at least nice to see that some egregiously amateurish behavior from this administration can get Democrats fired up. But this honestly ranks pretty low on the list of terrible things that this administration has done and is doing. It would be great to see that same enthusiasm directed elsewhere. Maybe this is just the shot in the arm they need.
That would be nice.
And big things are coming, folks. We'll get to those other terrible things in just a moment. But first, we do have to once again awkwardly take a break from the horrors to tell you about the brands that sponsor our happy little program.
Brands.
This episode is sponsored by Huel. A great product if you're like us and get so caught up in all this nonsense that you sometimes forget to eat. Finding it difficult to find time for a complete balanced meal? That's where Huel, spelled H-U-E-L, comes in. Their Black Edition ready to drink is a complete meal in a bottle, full of 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals, and low in...
What really matters is the news.
Yeah, so back to that news, the horrors. And it's no surprise at all, but a few weeks back when Mahmoud Khalil was kidnapped by ICE agents and shipped off to a Homeland Security prison 1,000 miles from his home to be processed for deportation, despite being a legal permanent resident, and solely because he was involved in campus protests against Israel's military operations in Gaza, it was clear that this was not a one-off incident and there would be more to come. And apparently they did not waste any time finding their next victim. But before they could grab her, she luckily caught wind of it, laid low, and immediately lawyered up.
Smart.
Here's the New York Times. A 21-year-old Columbia University student who has lived in the United States since she was a child sued President Trump and other high-ranking administration officials on Monday after immigration officials tried to arrest and deport her. The student, Yun Xiao Chung, is a legal permanent resident and junior who has participated in pro-Palestinian demonstrations at the school. The Trump administration is arguing that her presence in the United States hinders the administration's foreign policy agenda of halting the spread of anti-Semitism. Administration officials, including the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, cited the same rationale in explaining the arrest this month of Mahmoud Khalil, a graduate of the university and permanent resident who is being held in Louisiana.
Unlike Mr. Khalil, Ms. Chung does not appear to have been a prominent figure in the demonstrations that shook the school last year. But she was one of several students arrested this year in connection with a protest at Barnard College. Ms. Chung, a high school valedictorian who moved to the United States with her family from South Korea when she was 7, has not been detained by ICE. She remains in the country, but her lawyers would not comment on her whereabouts. One of Ms. Chung's lawyers, Naz Ahmad, said that the administration's efforts to punish and suppress speech it disagrees with smack of McCarthyism. Like many thousands of students nationwide, Yun Xiao raised her voice against what is happening in Gaza and in support of fellow students facing unfair discipline, said Ms. Ahmad, a co-director of CLEAR. It can't be the case that a straight-A student who has lived here most of her life can be whisked away and potentially deported all because she dares to speak up. Ms. Chung, who majors in English and gender studies, has participated in pro-Palestinian demonstrations since last year. Her lawyers say that she did not speak to reporters, negotiate on behalf of student demonstrators, or in any other way take a leadership position. She was, however, accused by the university of joining other students in posting flyers that pictured members of the board of trustees with the phrase "wanted for complicity in genocide." According to the lawsuit, the school did not find that Ms. Chung had violated any of its applicable policies.
Oh, well, too bad. You gotta go. It's shocking. And it goes without saying that the majority, overwhelming majority of people do not have the means to protect themselves like this.
Yeah, I mean, she lucked out. Being in America since she was a child and having a well-established life here probably played a big part in her having the network and channels to be able to, first of all, find a place to fucking hide, because she's literally in hiding.
Yeah.
She's
scary to think about.
Yeah.
Also a lot of similarities to something that happened a couple decades ago. It's so maddening that we're at this point already and
so many people are just like, oh, what's the big deal?
So this woman has been in the U.S. for most of her life, totally legally. She's a straight-A student at one of the nation's top schools, didn't even play a prominent role in these protests or even violate school policies, and they want to send her to a country that she hasn't lived in since she was 7 years old. What are we doing here? What the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah. Again, who does this help? How does this make America better, safer in any way? It seems like this person is, aside from some views you might not agree with, the literal, ideal immigration success story.
To them, there is no immigration success story. That's not possible. Doors closed.
They used to at least pretend, listen, you come here and you do everything right, that's a real American. But no, they don't fucking care.
It's very upsetting. Thank God she managed to avoid arrest and take this to the courts before they could disappear her. But if the government's plan had worked out, she'd be rotting in a prison cell right now, awaiting deportation. I mean, what else do you call this? This is fascism. It's straight up fascism. And if you're mad about Pete Hegseth using Signal, you should be absolutely fucking furious about this. And meanwhile, on Wednesday, another victim of this egregious government overreach was not so lucky and received the full Mahmoud Khalil treatment. Here's the New York Times.
An international student in a graduate program at Tufts University was taken into federal custody on Tuesday outside an off-campus apartment building, according to the university's president and an attorney representing the student. The student, Rumeysa Öztürk, a Turkish citizen, had a valid student visa as a doctoral student at Tufts, according to a statement from her lawyer, Masa Kanbabay. Ms. Ozturk, who is Muslim, was heading out to break her Ramadan fast with friends Tuesday night when she was detained by agents from the Department of Homeland Security near her apartment in Somerville, Massachusetts. Ms. Kambabai said, "We are unaware of her whereabouts and have not been able to contact her," the lawyer said. "No charges have been filed against Rumeza to date that we are aware of." A statement attributed to a senior spokesman for Homeland Security claims on Wednesday that Ms. Ozturk had engaged in activities in support of Hamas, considered grounds for visa issuance to be terminated. Records from Immigration and Customs Enforcement showed that a person with Ms. Ozturk's name was being held in a Louisiana detention center on Wednesday. So much like with Mahmoud Khalil, you get picked up on the fucking northeast coast and they send you to Louisiana.
And there's video of
literally,
this one.
yeah, and this one is
The video is horrifying because it's plain clothes, people in masks. What is anyone supposed to think?
yeah.
And also, this show, like, people that want to abuse immigrants can fucking cosplay and they have,
Yeah.
and they probably will.
It's
and
fair
so
game.
if you're someone and a bunch of people who have no identification on them really start jumping in your face and bossing, like, what are you supposed to do? It's a terrifying situation.
Yeah.
She's just walking on the sidewalk, and then suddenly a half dozen plainclothes ICE agents ambush her, cuff her, shove her in the back of an SUV. And what was her crime? Well, according to the Times, Miss Ozturk was listed as one of several authors of an opinion essay published last March in the Tufts student newspaper. The essay criticized university leaders for their response to demands that Tufts acknowledge the Palestinian genocide and divest itself from companies with ties to Israel. That's
Oh my
it.
God, we got to get this person out of the United States.
That's it.
We need to kidnap this person and send her away.
It's they're not only are specifically in these examples just great immigration stories, but also participating in what America was built on, which
Yeah.
is a peaceful protest against something that you view as injustice.
Something that's kind of interesting about this is like, I mean, the original fascists were kind of smart about how they went about like ratcheting things up, because they started off by going after antisocial, undesirable, like they started off with people that like most people would agree, like, yeah, we don't need any of that. Whereas here, they're going after fucking like honor students.
It's gross either way, but yeah, it's like the whole thing is disgusting, worrisome, and honestly terrifying, because I see these examples and I see people who have the connections available to at least have someone wonder where they are. And you think about the majority of migrants or immigrants in this country who don't have access to any of that, whose families will say goodbye to them in the morning and maybe never see them again, or their kids who they send off to school.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole, I mean, we've got this shit happening with the student protesters and whatnot, but then the deportations of actual undocumented people, that shit's even more just cruel and senseless.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So while I'm glad that these are the ones making headlines, and it's good that these are getting attention, it's a lot of people are going to go missing that don't have this kind of
I mean,
publicity.
unfortunately, a big chunk of this country thinks that, well, you came into America illegally, you broke the rules, sorry. You can't even say that about these people, though.
They did everything
legally.
right.
They're here legally. They did everything fucking right.
Yeah.
And they seem to be model citizens, aside from an opinion that you might not like.
So anyways, being a part of that essay, that was enough to get her labeled as a dangerous, virulent anti-Semite by the Zionist doxing organization Canary Mission, which exists solely to smear people as anti-Semites for expressing even the most tame criticism of Israel.
It's an insane organization.
And if you look at the actual op-ed she co-wrote, her specific crime seems to have been simply citing Amnesty International and the UN to make the case that her university should divest from Israel. That's all it took for the U.S. government to decide that this Fulbright scholar needs to be removed from the U.S. immediately. And again, no other word for it. It's fascism. And a lot of people need to wake up about it. The people that are willingly ignoring it. People who are responsible for it by their vote.
I mean, it's escalating very quickly, and They're testing the electric fences like the raptors in Jurassic Park. They're seeing what people will and won't put up with. And it's been extremely troubling how with Mahmoud Khalil and now these more recent ones, pretty lukewarm response from the people supposedly in the opposition party, supposedly looking out for your freedoms that are being taken away.
Luckily, the one we previously talked about has the lawyers on the case, and that should, you would hope, set some sort of precedent.
Yeah.
So luckily,
you would hope, but like it just sucks when like fucking like Chuck Schumer and people like that are like, listen, I think this person's a total piece of shit and I hate them and I think they're a fucking Nazi.
But you really need to find me a reason.
Yeah, but this seems, I don't know, it seems like the government might be overstepping it. But just to be clear, I fucking hate them.
Not that it's just like generally inhumane to fly from a country that they've lived in to another country that they've never even visited to be put in one of the roughest prisons in the world. It seems a little overboard.
Anyways, moving on. Fascism isn't just evil, it's also stupid and inefficient. Yep, it's Doge time once again. And if you're somehow still under the impression that Elon Musk treating the federal government like a startup whose quarterlies came up short is actually saving the government money or is efficient in any way, well, here's the Washington Post. Senior tax officials are bracing for a sharp drop in revenue collected this spring as an increasing number of individuals and businesses spurn filing their taxes or attempt to skip paying balances owed to the Internal Revenue Service, according to 3 people with knowledge of tax projections. Treasury Department and IRS officials are predicting a decrease of more than 10% in tax receipts by the April 15th deadline compared with 2024, said the people who spoke on the condition of anonymity to share non-public data. That would amount to more than $500 billion in lost federal revenue. The IRS collected $5.1 trillion last year. For context, the U.S. government spent $825 billion on the Defense Department in fiscal 2024. The idea of doing that in 1 year, it's hard to grapple with how meaningful of a shift that represents, said Natasha Sarin, president of the Yale Budget Lab and a senior Biden administration tax official.
The prediction, officials say, is directly tied to changing taxpayer behavior and President Donald Trump's rapid demolition of parts of the IRS. Senior tax agency officials issued detailed warnings about those outcomes to the incoming Trump administration before the president took office, according to records obtained by the Washington Post. The administration has moved to fire nearly 20,000 agency employees, specifically targeting new hires in taxpayer services and enforcement divisions. It's already dismissed more than 11,000 workers at the agency, though some of their statuses are unclear pending fast-moving court cases. The IRS has dropped investigations of high-value corporations and taxpayers, according to several agency employees involved in those inquiries, because it's had to triage resources to keep internal systems operating. 2 agency commissioners have resigned since Trump took office. The IRS's head of compliance, Heather Malloy, stepped down effective Friday. The results could mean the government has to borrow more money to cover the cost of federal services. The IRS collects 95% of federal revenue each year. A shortfall in tax dollars, if Congress doesn't cut spending to match, would drive up the national debt, which already sits at $36.2 trillion.
Wait, that's the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
What? And the IRS is going to get 10% less money. Hey, buddy, that's how the government is funded.
Yes.
10%, like a 10% drop in revenue for any actual like company would be a pretty fucking big deal.
Yeah.
Maybe less so if you're Tesla. Who cares?
And then
Tesla.
And then you've already fired all the people that were there to go after the biggest tax cheats. So you had that money finally coming in.
Yeah.
Now you're losing an additional 10%.
They did this all backwards. You're supposed to have disastrous revenue news and then fire half the company. Mm-hmm. They fired half the company and then got the disastrous financial news. Yeah. So what do you do after that? Fire more people? I guess we'll find out. I think we're going to try.
We're going to keep firing until morale improves.
Yeah. But it's also very predictable that like with the Biden IRS where they're like, we're hiring more people, we're taking on these complicated tax cases, and it was successful. They found a bunch of money that otherwise would have slipped through the cracks. And they're like, okay, we're not only undoing that, we're going to make the IRS even more inefficient. Yeah. So everyone whose taxes aren't just like a simple W-2 is just like, all right,
fuck it.
If I'm slipping through the cracks, if I'm getting one over on the IRS, this is the fucking year, baby.
Yeah, everyone's.
What are you going to do about it?
I'm sure every accountant is just like, every extension. It's just
who cares?
It's insane.
They're not going to check everyone's taxes.
I keep saying that, but I'm every day I wake up and I'm just gobsmacked by reality.
Yeah, I mean, it's like on the roads, there might not be that many traffic cops out there, but there's enough that your average person is like, you know what, I'm not going to drive 100 miles an hour because it's just not worth the risk. But there's like one traffic cop covering the entire city of Los Angeles. That changes things. Yeah, a lot of people are gonna feel the need for
especially when you're a very large company or a very rich person who can pay the fines if they ever do come.
Yeah. Oh, whoops.
I forgot. Sorry. Yeah, there's a lot going on back in 2025, as we all remember. Pete Hegseth was firing off those text messages.
Anyway, I guess we'll see how that turns out. But 10%, if tax revenue does drop by 10%, that's fucking bad. That's really bad, especially on top of like just everything else with the tariffs. We got new tariffs like right before we came in here. The auto tariffs, 25%. Great news.
Oh,
who wants to buy a car? Oh, you can't afford it? Well, stop being poor. Anyway, very cool, very efficient. That's our episode, and
there's gonna be more coming, folks. But hey, I got some good news for you. You know what that good news is? Well, first of all, I got my personal monitor buddies.
I got my monitor buddies too.
So if you're still waiting, don't worry. We didn't even get ours till just yesterday.
Another interesting little thing is Canada. They got their monitor buddies like 3 weeks ago. It's just coming to the U.S.
Right now. That's right.
Canada
that's right.
and Europe. Those guys they've been hanging out with their monitor
Trump
buddies
administration
for weeks.
in action, baby.
Yeah. Because like it finally got to us, and I was like, well, the West Coast must be the last place. And then a bunch of people replied, they're like, nope, literally, you're the first place in the U.S.
It said like Long Beach, and then here. And so that was the first good news. Second good news, if you're in look of a distraction, baby, it's baseball season.
Yeah.
Take me out to the ball game.
Seriously, take me out.
They got so many teams. They got so many games. You could wake up, turn over, and you might get lucky and see one on TV.
You could spend all night looking at esoteric little statistics.
That's right.
And never run out of new stats to look at.
Yeah, instead of obsessing over like weird right-wing memes and administration officials,
you should get into sabermetrics.
Yeah. So yeah, go Dodgers. Anyways, we will be back soon with another video. In the meantime, please check out our most. I mean, it's literally an update that we did before. So
some people like to watch the news in reverse. I don't get it.
Hey, you know what? If you haven't seen it, just let it play. Give us.
Yeah.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. In the meantime, click the like button. We always ask you to do that because it's the one thing that you can do that helps the channel. Also, if you leave a comment, that really helps too. You can support the channel by clicking the thank button or becoming a member by clicking the join button. We love you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm under attack by the real president of the United States of America, by the wealthiest person on the planet, Elon Musk. All of this started when baby formula breast milk stealer of Blizzard, allegedly, Grums, a 60-year-old man, decided to post this. Oh my God, the Assassin's Creed social media account came into the rescue? That's crazy. Elon Musk calling me a sellout. Assassin's Creed, is that what the guy playing your Path of Exile 2 account told you? Oh no.
I don't know how many of you guys remember, but I took a 2-week break off like recently because I was ill, and then someone's made me ill again. I've already actually edited 2 whole videos I could have just put up, but I want to talk about this because it's rare that something I'm passionate about coincides with like a lot of stuff I cover. So you guys will probably know, if you follow me for a long time, followed my gaming Instagram, I'm a big fan of Assassin's Creed because I love history so much. I'm also generally, I realize, when playing X-Defiant and all those factions, I basically am a big fan of Ubisoft games. Like, I've played most of their franchises since I was younger. Like, my first game on the Game Boy Advance was Rayman Advance. My first game on the DS was Rayman 2. And I've enjoyed these games for a long time. But also, I've covered the hate campaign against AC Shadows, mainly for featuring Yasuke, who is an African slave brought to Japan by the Portuguese, and then basically taken off them by Oda Nobunaga and trained in the ways of the samurai. And what happened in real history is he eventually, I think, got given back to the Portuguese and put into slavery. They deal with that in their own way in the game, where it's just kind of funny, like, even thinking he would go back to that when you see how powerful he is. But, yeah, I just want to talk about all of this today because Ubisoft getting their dunks in, Elon Musk attacking Hassan for promoting this game, and that's kind of what I want to base the first half on, talking about that in regards to the hate campaign failing. But then I just want to talk about, like, Assassin's Creed games and appreciating them on a deeper level, because you saw this with the backlash to Star Wars Outlaws, which I thought was a really good game as someone who likes Star Wars as well. And I like Assassin's Creed. And guess what? You know, Outlaws was not like Assassin's Creed, but because it had like Ubisoft attached, people just like, oh my God, it's Far Cry, Assassin's Creed. It's made by Massive Entertainment, who made like the Division games. They don't make Assassin's Creed games. It's like a completely different studio. But I feel like this meme about Ubisoft just kind of overlooks what they do well in the Assassin's Creed games. And I feel like they should be given more credit, because as someone who loves history, be that, you know, medieval or early modern, there's just nothing that can replicate what these games make me feel in terms of playing them. And Assassin's Creed is the first game I've ever played set in Ireland. I think it's like the only game I've ever played set in Ireland. And they did such a good job of it. Like, you can go through most of Ireland in the 9th century, and it's just amazing to do that, like, finally. And I feel like they're the only big company who will actually take a chance and do stuff like this. And I don't think people appreciate it on that level, but if Assassin's Creed goes away, nothing replaces it. Like, I've been playing Kingdom Come 2 lately, and that does a good job in the same way that Assassin's Creed does. But I can't really think of too many other games that do something similar for me in terms of really immersing you in a historical setting. So I want to talk about all that today. And one thing I'll promote, I have an Instagram account called The Gamernacle. Basically, I just post all my photos I've been taking over the last couple of years, focusing on Assassin's Creed Shadows right now. And I just wrote a long post about Christianity coming to Japan for the first time. And what, you know, to its credit, AC Shadows did well is I know a lot about religious history, particularly in Europe, to do with like the Hussites in Bohemia, or to do with like the Protestant Reformation, the Church of England, Catholicism in the New World. But I never knew much about Japan, so it was fun playing Assassin's Creed and finding all these Jesuit monasteries and Jesuit-like churches in Japan, and put it in my head of like where the Catholic Church was at in this part of the world. And that's one of the things I love about the Assassin's Creed game, so go check that out. But if you're unaware, basically, Hassan has been doing advertisements for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, I think it's perfectly valid to criticize him for taking these corporate sponsorships if you want, especially when in regards to Ubisoft, which does have a history of treating its workers badly, and also CEOs being like abusive in the workplace. So that is fair and valid. And personally, as much as I love a lot of Ubisoft games and I love Assassin's Creed, I wouldn't take a sponsorship from them, because I feel like when you're paid to promote this stuff, especially like the corporate angle, I wouldn't personally do that because of how I hate the corporate side of the company. Not because I hate the people involved in making these games, or I hate the games generally, because I like them, but I still wouldn't do it. But that's a fair criticism, and I'm sure if I even said that to him, he wouldn't take it in a terrible way. But a lot of the right wing are mad because, of course, Hassan is the big boogeyman of the left on Twitch. So Grums, who I think is like 65, he's basically like a failed game developer who's making some game that's had loads of crowdfunding and it's just never come out. He writes a lot about Ubisoft and how much money they're throwing at terrorist platform and streamers. Then Elon chimes in, Hassan is a fraud, and then he writes, sellout would be more accurate. Objectively, he's promoting a terrible game just for the money. Now, there are multiple things concerning about that. Firstly, like, Elon Musk really shouldn't know who Hassan is. I guess maybe he was aware because of Grimes being on Hassan's stream. And another thing is, if Elon Musk is really so important to just the US government and these various companies, why the fuck is he talking about Hassan on Twitter? Part of this tweet is just like the divorced dads assembling. And like, why does he have an opinion? He just must have been jealous. That's the only thing I can think about. You know everyone hates Elon Musk if they get ratioed this bad. So the official Assassin's Creed account comes in and says, is that what the guy playing a Path of Exile 2 account told you? This got 640,000 likes. So if you guys are unaware, Elon Musk used to claim he was like, in the, I think the top 20 of this game for Path of Exile 2. And it turns out he was actually just paying someone to boost his account, because when he actually played it, when he was streaming, why is this guy streaming? It was pretty clear he didn't know what he was doing. Like, he basically never played the game. People who play the game said, this is what like a complete novice would do if they were playing this game. He just has like a really highly ranked account. And then Grum's replying about Assassin's Creed not doing as well as they want, and Ubisoft replying, the game is out, again, ratioing these people. And obviously, the big thing is, for both of these, the game is selling well. And even the article this guy referenced talking about AC Valhalla was a bit of a perfect storm. I remember because I bought my PS5 at the same time. It came out at the launch of the next gen, and it was also on the old gen. so everyone could buy it, and there was a lot more user base for it. And also, Assassin's Creed, I guess, was in a bit of a better place back then, and a bit more goodwill towards it off the backs of, you know, an excellent game like Origins, and one that has become a bit of a fan favorite in Odyssey. But at the same time, I fully expect Shadows to do well because the word of mouth is actually really good. And that's something that's surprising, but also it feels like it's not surprising because they delayed it so much to ensure this is the hit they need, because Ubisoft have been doing pretty bad as a company recently, especially with something like Star Wars Outlaws not doing so well, which, you know, I've said I think is unfair because I think that game's very good. Now, Hideki Kamiya, who directed like Resident Evil 2, Akami, is making Akami 2, he just posted that he's enjoying the game, and it's really funny because obviously he's a Japanese developer. Loads of these right-wing incels were crying in the comments, and he was just owning them in a really funny way. I'll put some on screen, maybe I'll give you a little montage, but I just loved a lot of his replies.
They never stood a chance. Proceed to extract them.
Nothing clean, right?
So yeah, that was really funny, but it's reflective largely of a lot of Japanese critics liking this game, because I think it's done in a way that if you love Japanese history, or you just love history like myself, you're gonna enjoy this game. So if we talk about the hate campaign failing, the arguments were just always so ridiculous, obviously coming from people who weren't fans. Like, if you go to my last video on it, I only made one video on it, people in the comments are saying, oh my god, this is the first Assassin's Creed where you don't play as the native character to the country it's set in. Which I don't know where they even got this from. Maybe someone was trolling on 4chan. That weren't even true in the last entry or the last main entry. Like, Eivor is from Norway. Like, 90% of the game is set in England, but it's not even true for like most of the games as well. Like, Eivor spends most of his time not in Norway. When you have Edward Kenway, who I think is Welsh, in the Caribbean, then you have Adewale, who is like born to a slave family in like Trinidad. The game isn't set in Trinidad. Assassin's Creed Revelations is set in Istanbul, and you play as an Italian man. So it's like, this never held up. So this argument was ridiculous. But also their over-focus on Yasuke and thinking people care that much, because what I think they did well with the game is you're introduced to Yasuke straight away. Like, he is the first character you play. And I think once you understand the context of it, your problems of like, oh my god, like they put a black man samurai in the game, it increasingly becomes like more ridiculous because, yeah, he is brought to Japan as like a slave and he was a real person, and they contextualize it in a way that makes you accept that this could have happened, right? And I think they did a good job of that. Like, even when you're walking through the streets, everyone's just staring at you, they call you like the black man and stuff. Like, they make it very clear this isn't like a common occurrence to see someone like this in Japan. So I think with all of that, it's just very hard to keep hating on this game for being like historically inaccurate, which is, a, you know, as someone who did a history degree, a bit of a weird term for these gamers to use anyway. Overall, the main thing is the game is fun. And when you're playing as the shinobi, Naoe, her gameplay set is so much more improved than like previous Assassin's Creed games. The fact that she can go prone now, she can like breathe underwater with that little stick. Like, I'm so enjoying it. I put the stealth on expert. And I recommend everyone do this because they can actually spot you on the rooftops. Because in old Assassin's Creed games, and like most games generally, if you are above the sight line of like their just straight sight, they won't be able to see you. But I feel like only Metal Gear Solid 5 and now Assassin's Creed Shadows, maybe some older Splinter Cells, they actually like look up and see you and they spot you really quickly. Because yeah, if someone was just climbing on a roof in front of you, you would see them like really quick. And it's all about like using shadows to your advantage. So I just think like they just made a really solid game. It's a really solid evolution. As someone who likes all the Assassin's Creed games, I think they've done such a good job in just bringing the gameplay forward, where I hope the Shinobi style of gameplay is the model going forward. And yeah, you can see some elements of the Valhalla engine, especially with Yasuke's combat and stuff. But overall, it feels like they've just, you know, overhauled so much of it. And I'm really impressed with it on a gameplay level. And I feel like when a game is just like fun and it's in a setting people, you know, kind of get drawn to, like feudal Japan. We've obviously had that Shogun show being successful recently. People are just going to enjoy it and not really give a shit. And also, outside of the hysterical culture war in places like Twitter, loads of people just don't give a shit. Like, Assassin's Creed, for me, in terms of people I know who play it, it becomes a series that a lot of casual people play. It's very popular. Like, I know loads of people who aren't like hardcore gamers who will get every Assassin's Creed game, right? Because it has had that popularity in places like England. So one of my friends right now, I saw that he's played it more than me, and I was really surprised. I'm like, how have you had the time to play this more than me? I feel like I've been playing it quite a lot. That's just the appeal it has. And when you show people, yeah, samurai and ninja, you can play as both, and it's got good reviews and good word of mouth, then there's no reason not to play it. And if the reason is Samurai Black, then that's just not going to wash with a lot of people. But now I just want to talk about, like, Ubisoft generally, and feel free to leave if you don't give a shit about this part. But I was going to make a whole video called In Defense of Ubisoft. Not the terrible corporate company, but in defense of the games. And this is what I want to talk about, because a lot of people, like, just generally on Reddit and everything, they're like, oh, Ubisoft shovelware. I saw someone post that today, like, oh my god, like, Kojima makes such great games, Ubisoft is just shovelware. And you just see the memes all the time that Ubisoft is terrible, Ubisoft is crap. And I've seen like loads of people stream games like Watch Dogs or stream games like Assassin's Creed. And I don't think these games are good for streaming for kind of a couple reasons. But also, I think Ubisoft do a really good job with a lot of the stuff surrounding the game itself. And I guess in the gaming medium, a lot of people only care about the moment-to-moment gameplay. And there are certain games I do care about that more, like Dynasty Warriors. But even with Dynasty Warriors, the overall context is what makes it fun as well. Like learning about Chinese history, the music, the scenery, that all makes it good as well. And I feel like with a lot of Ubisoft games, people either can't or just don't want to engage with what it's trying to do. So I'm not defending like the massive bloat in these games often. I do think it's an overplayed like argument. But also I think the goal for each of these games is Ubisoft are like, we're gonna do this once and we're gonna give it to you. We're gonna give you the Viking game. We're gonna give you the samurai game, and we're gonna throw everything in. And to their credit, sometimes it works, like with the board games in Valhalla, the drinking games. There's lots of cool stuff like that. But then yeah, you do get the bloat. You do get things maybe you don't want to do. But then what people don't realize is you could ignore a lot of them. Like gang hideouts, fortresses, you don't have to do them. In Odyssey, the war mechanic, you don't even have to engage with that if you don't want to. It's kind of just there if you want to do it. But I'm not going to defend the game design. If you don't like the game design, that's perfectly valid. I don't like FromSoft games generally because I just don't enjoy that game design, and especially Elden Ring. I don't think the kind of Dark Souls format really translates well to an open world. But with Assassin's Creed, something I appreciate so much as someone who loves history is just immersing myself in a historical setting. And I think Shadows might be the best yet. Like, it's absolutely amazing. Just walking around, seeing all the NPC interactions, walking around a corner and seeing two children with their father learning how to sword fight with bamboo sticks. In Syndicate, seeing like 3 or 4 different animations for kids playing football with each other. Just the attention to detail in these games is really underrated. And I said this at Ghost of Tsushima, which I really like, and I think the combat is better in that game than Shadows. The stealth isn't as good. But that world feels so lifeless because they just didn't nail the NPC stuff. Where Ubisoft, if you compare them, even if Ghost looks a little better, I think it does artistically, if you compare them, there's no comparison. Like, the world feels alive in Shadows, and it feels like you're really in a historical time period. It feels like you've gone to this place, and that's because they do such a good job with all these NPCs and what they do in the environment. Like, Assassin's Creed Origins, I think it's absolutely amazing for this. Like, I'll never forget seeing like a funeral procession for the first time in that game. Like, nothing to do with anything, but like, you just see it, and it's so cool. And if you love history like me, you can't get enough of this stuff, and it just helps you imagine this period like nothing else can. You have movies, of course. You have so many movies in feudal Japan. You have so many, like, even video games in this period. But for me, I can never immerse myself in the same way I can with Assassin's Creed games, in that I just walk around these worlds and I just think about like living in this time period, what it was like for these people, how irrelevant I am in the grand scheme of things, that I am less relevant than this NPC I see now. If there was a Ubisoft game in a like 200 years set in like 2025 London, I would be even less relevant than like these NPCs. And I feel like people just don't want to engage in that level. And also the educational benefit of Assassin's Creed. And in Shadows, I'm learning loads about like Christianity, firearms, just what Japan was like back then. And I feel like it's drawn me in for this medium. And for a lot of more casual people who wouldn't even read history books, it draws you in and you read about it and you learn stuff about our world. And that goes for all of the games. Even like, I didn't really give a shit about ancient Egypt or ancient Greece. And after playing these games and really feeling like what it could be like to be alive then, I go out and seek books in it. Because I'm like, oh, this is so fascinating to me. And I never would imagine I'd love this period so much. Now, of course, you do have the big ones. Like, people do love Viking stuff. But even then, like, the way it shows you it from a more realistic lens, less sensationalized about the Vikings. Like, what was it really like to be like, you know, Scandinavian this time? Like, how were they different to the Christians? How did they become Christians? What was that cultural exchange? And that's what they do so well with Assassin's Creed games. The cultural exchange, I love that they do this so much, is they set most of their games in a period where there's like a civilizational clash. So with Shadows, it's like Christianity and Buddhism spreading in Japan versus like Shintoism and the old ways. In Origins, you have native Egyptians versus Greeks who are now fighting against the Romans. In Valhalla, you have the Saxons versus the Norse, and then there's other groups like the Irish and the French. And I just think it's so interesting just to imagine what history would have been like, and to make you realise as well, to touch on the diversity angle, history was very diverse and people just had massive exchanges with each other long before we actually realised it. So history didn't exist with everyone just having their own little group until like the 1800s and stuff. No, they were always interconnected and there was always this cultural exchange. And I feel like Assassin's Creed does it so well in making us really see this firsthand and helping everyone visualize history. And like I said, I have a history degree. I've done the education, I've read the books, and I still read books. There's just nothing like it. There's nothing like getting to enjoy these games at my own pace and walk around cities that I've been to. Like, I'm in Kyoto right now in AC Shadows. There are buildings there that I've actually been to in real life. And the same with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. When you go to like York in the game, there are buildings there that are there in real life, and there's nothing cooler making you feel that connection to history than going to a time period so long ago and seeing like this was there, and I've been there and I've seen it and I've touched this place and I can go there virtually into the past and it's still there, and I can imagine about all the things this building has been through. And for me, if you just love it, there's nothing comparable. Like I said, Kingdom Come Deliverance is pretty good, but I don't think it compares still. Because something about the massive scope of these games and how big they are and how they cover everything that I just really like. And that goes beyond the Discovery Tour mode, which is actually a separate educational mode where you explore it with like a guide or someone voicing stuff, telling you all this information. So I feel like people can have perfectly valid criticisms of the gameplay mechanics of Assassin's Creed games and maybe the activities you do. But in service to learning about history and immersing yourself in history, I think they are perfectly adequate. And in many of the games, they're very fun, like Origins or Shadows. And I feel like Ubisoft gets a really bad rap because, again, where is the video game set in 9th century Baghdad, Ireland, France, England, Norway? Where are the video games set in the 7 Years' War? Where are the video games set in the Golden Age of piracy? Where are the video games even set in the Revolutionary War from a big budget studio? Where are they? They just don't exist. This is the only franchise that does it, and it's the only franchise that will touch stuff like that. And although feudal Japan, and even this period, is being made with, I think, Ghost of Yotei, even Sucker Punch, they just don't do things as well as Ubisoft in this regard. So that's my main defense of Ubisoft games. And also, you're allowed to like them. That you don't have to caveat things saying, I know it's Ubisoft. Just like it. You don't have to feel insecure. I like it. I think Ubisoft games are better than FromSoft games. That's my personal opinion. I don't give a shit what you think. So if you like a game, just say it. You don't have to please the gamer crowd and be like Ubisoft bad before you say something nice about a game. And I'm seeing this a lot recently because Star Wars Outlaws got like a massive discount on PS5. So like every single post in the Star Wars Outlaws subreddit is like, holy shit, this game is really good. Why did I listen to all the influencers saying it was Ubisoft and it sucked? Because if you played that game and didn't know it was Ubisoft, you wouldn't know. You just wouldn't, because it's so different from things like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. So that's another one I recommend for similar reasons, in that the NPC design and the world building in that game is just amazing as well. And it's just so immersive, and that's what you have to, kind of think about with this stuff. So I'm glad that Elon got humiliated, and I'm glad that these people are coping harder, that Assassin's Creed Shadows is doing well. But I would say generally to everyone, don't base your gaming opinions on just moist critical streaming Watch Dogs and saying it's shit, because sometimes with open world games, they're the sum of their parts. And you don't have to base everything on if the gameplay is like blowing your mind every 2 seconds, right? And even with stuff like Watch Dogs, like Watch Dogs Legion, one of probably the most left-wing games I've ever played. Like politically, really interesting commentary on the future of Britain, which has mostly come true. And I respect it so much for that. And yet the game isn't the best in terms of even gameplay in the Watch Dogs series, but I'm taking it as an overall package. And I feel like a lot of the time with Ubisoft games, people do not take it as an overall package. They take it purely as, is the gameplay as good as From Software games? And the same thing will happen with like AC Shadows versus Ghost of Tsushima. Because the combat in Ghost of Tsushima is better, people would say every single thing in that game is actually better than this one, which I would 100% disagree with. So that's it for the video. Let me know what you guys think if you made it this far. Thank you for watching.
Capturing this objective.
TACOM, requesting napalm strike on my mark. Securing B. Losing A.
Come on, fight like a turtle.
Taking Bravo underway.
Pizza is forever.
Bravo is on.
Let's break some
UAV
books.
established overhead. Bion requesting LDBR strike. Bravo. Enemy RCXD detected.
Calling in Score Street. Enemy shooter.
Losing B.
UAV MTS, 50%. Check.
We're losing Alpha.
Hostile sighted. Tactical incoming.
Priority crossing requested. UAV exiting AO.
They're saying don't blame the messenger. Irresponsible. Lied about Russia, lied about Gold Star.
Lied about Russia, lied about Gold Star veterans, lied. He hates the president. Fake news. That's it, though. Okay. Atlantic Magazine released more text about the Yemen strike plan from the group chat. We'll start off with TextGate. We'll start off with that. TextGate, Yemen Gate, Houthi group chat gate, whatever you want to call it. I have a lot of unique thoughts on the matter that I haven't really seen be broadly reflected in other mainstream outlets. So let's take going on here.
This is CNN breaking news.
All right, we have breaking news. The Atlantic has just published a brand new piece by Jeffrey Goldberg and Shane Harris. And it has the details and the text messages that the government says was not classified, and it tells you all about what is happening 31 minutes before they launch the planes that drop the bombs in Yemen. Brian Stelter joining us now with more details. There are huge revelations in this, and they certainly, how would you describe what you're seeing in the text messages?
I see you.
These are shockingly detailed descriptions of the bombs that are about to fall in Yemen.
Sorry, I was blowing my nose. So I can't talk. Sorry, I was blowing my nose, so I muted myself, and then I started hiccuping, so I can't even talk. Oh my God. All right, whatever. I'm not even saying anything.
And Jeffrey Goldberg is getting these details many minutes before the bombs fall. If this is not classified information, I would like the president to tell us what would count as classified information. Now, The Atlantic is publishing this on theatlantic.com because Trump and his aides have said that none of this is classified. That has been the main defense from the Trump White House in the past 2 days, that these text messages were a mistake. Goldberg never should have seen them. but nothing was classified. Nobody was in any danger. That's the argument we've heard advanced. Because of that argument, Goldberg went back to his colleagues and talked with his lawyers at the Atlantic, and they decided to go ahead and publish the text messages that they had originally withheld. Remember, Goldberg withheld some of this information because he thought it could risk national security, because it could have put U.S. military members in harm's way. So now he's decided to go ahead and publish the full unredacted text message chain with one omission. He is still withholding the name of a CIA employee because the CIA has asked him to do so. So that is notable. There still is something in these messages that is considered so sensitive that the Atlantic is choosing not to publish it. But
yeah, of course the information is classified. What a stupid conversation to be having. I mean, the administration is so wrong. Yeah, obviously it is incredibly classified. You can't. The fact that they were having this convo over Signal is wild. All of this is wild. The fact that they accidentally brought up Goldberg. If one more person writes a fucking dumbass cure in the chat for hiccups, I'm going to make my own Signal group with the principals committee and start doing strikes as well, okay? On this chat. I am going to go on a ban spree that resembles the principals committee's appetite for death and destruction. Okay, our story begins in Yemen. As you guys know, the Ansar Allah movement, led by the Al-Houthi family, also known as the Houthis, which was redesignated as a terrorist group under the Biden administration under Operation Prosperity Guardian, has been maintaining a blockade on the Red Sea, which happens to be along their coastline. Biden spent $1 billion in Operation Prosperity Guardian to try and stop them from overtaking ships passing the Red Sea in an effort to thwart the flow of commerce that goes through Israeli ports. They actually saw a lot of success in this process. The people that, on the other hand, saw a lot of failure in this process was the American government. The American government spent $1 billion and did not end up stopping the Houthis from being able to overtake ships and make it virtually impossible and far too dangerous to allow commerce to flow through the Red Sea. And now the Trump administration is doing the exact same. In a circumstance like this, you have two options. You either try to bomb Yemen again, as every president has done prior, from Barack Obama to Trump 1 to Joe Biden to Trump 2, or listen to the demands that the Yemeni government is making, specifically looking at when the blockade on the Red Sea stopped. Because the blockade on the Red Sea did not exist pre-October 8. The blockade on the Red Sea did not exist during times of ceasefire. They very openly said, we're stopping our blockade. Commerce can flow through the Red Sea once again, since Israel has finally come to the table and agreed to the terms and conditions of their quote-unquote very own ceasefire. So that's the process here. You can either listen to the demands being made by the Houthis, which is very reasonable, actually, very moral, 100%. I will say that. I have no issue stating that. It is one of the few groups in the region that is actively trying to issue financial penalties to it that is currently doing a genocide. Okay? I'm not going to sit here and say that their demands are unjust. It is perfectly reasonable, and the expectation from all of you would be the exact same during the Nazi Holocaust. If people were trying to disrupt supply lines going into Germany at the time, if they knew that the concentration camps were being built and set up and the Holocaust was taking place, I'm certain that no one would criticize the resistance, just like no one would criticize the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, unless you're a Nazi, in which case you would criticize those things. So, America, being the most powerful nation on the planet, has the capacity to rein in its attack dog Israel in the region and say, hey man, enough, you've done enough genocide, we gotta dial this back. But instead, they're attacking all of the people that are trying to stop Israel from doing a genocide, because we are objectively the bad guys. But of course, Trump being Trump and having an administration filled to the brim with some of the most incompetent drunkards and this has had an incredibly Trumpian moment here. Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, sets up a group chat on Signal. It's a commercial application that anyone can use. Very strange. Normally, classified information should be documented and kept to secret back channels of communication. You should never use an application that can use the phone numbers in your personal contacts list on your personal phone to make matters of state security, to communicate with people on matters of classified information and war, okay? There's a secondary side to the story that I don't see a lot of people talking about, which is that Signal conversations are slated to be deleted. They get deleted after a certain period of time, and I'm fairly certain that this group chat, the principals set up, that they actually invited Goldberg, Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine to, accidentally, was slated to be deleted. This is illegal. This is illegal. These sorts of conversations are supposed to be documented and logged. It doesn't have to be revealed to the public, but they're supposed to be documented and logged. The very fact that they are having secret convos like this that are slated to be deleted is dangerous. Okay? It is a way to skirt accountability, and that is precisely the reason why it is illegal. Just so you understand. Disappearing message time was set to 1 week. As I said, these are the text messages that were fully revealed, from what I understand, by Jeffrey Goldberg and The Atlantic. And as you can see, it says, Michael Waltz, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, added you to the group, alongside 18 other members. Every single person on that Houthi PC small group is a person that's supposed to be there. Well, I guess technically no one is supposed to be there because it's not supposed to be on Signal, but these are the people that are supposed to be having this conversation, with the exception of Jeffrey Goldberg. Now, my opinion on this is a little bit different than the way that the media is covering it, because everyone is focusing on the incompetence of this administration. Everyone is focusing on the national security issues that this presents. As someone who thinks that the American actions against the Houthis is completely unjustifiable and on the wrong side of history and on the wrong side of morality, as someone who believes that the American State Department could do a whole lot of good and refuses to do so and does a whole lot of bad instead, I don't necessarily care that they are being incompetent. I wish that they would be less belligerent and still be incompetent. I care about their belligerent nature. I care about their violent nature. I don't necessarily care that they are being incompetent and accidentally revealing the comings and goings of how the executive office makes wartime decisions.
Right.
And I've always maintained that I'm pro-leaks. Okay? And there it is. This is from April 14th, 2023. I like leaks. I don't care if it's because you saw massive harm being done to civilians at the hands of our military and wanted to blow the whistle, or because your Groiper Discord kittens were acting out of line and you needed to teach them a lesson. This is what I said about the Groiper military guy who leaked state secrets back then. Leaks are good. I'm pro-leaks. I am always pro-leaks and will continue to be pro-leaks. This is how good journalism happens. Now, of course, lucky for them, even though they were unlucky and invited Jeffrey Goldenberg into this conversation. Lucky for them, Jeffrey Goldenberg is not a good journalist. He's a bad journalist. He's a stenographer for the State Department. He has actively championed the Iraq War and followed through on the lies that the American government was presenting. So for that reason, he managed this in, I think, the worst ways possible because he's a careerist. That's precisely the reason why the National Security Advisor, Michael Wallace, had his phone number to begin with. Okay? Having said that, everyone's focus on this has been the hypocrisy. Hillary Clinton vindicated, or the fact that they made this like blunder, this very stupid mistake. And I get that. It's funny. Okay? That part is funny. And their defense of this, the administration's defense of this has been even funnier. But I think it's still more important to remember that these guys are talking about blowing up civilians in the poorest nation on the planet. And for what reason? Because the poorest nation on the planet has decided to take matters into their own hands against a much more powerful nation in the region doing unlimited child murder in a genocidal campaign that they have enacted. I think that in and of itself is far more important to discuss, and I don't see anybody discussing that aspect of it. I truly don't see a lot of people discussing that aspect of it. But I digress. Let's get back to the drama of it all.
But the headline here is that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth did send detailed descriptions of the military strike in Yemen to this group ahead of time. Goldberg was able to read these messages ahead of time. He looked at it and didn't know if it was real or not, but then he looked on social media and saw that the bombs were beginning to fall in Yemen. People can read this for themselves on the Atlantic website, but what you see in Hegseth's message, the key message here is from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and he specifies the timing for the attack, the first wave, the second wave, which military fighters were going to be used, and exactly what would happen when. So again, if that's not classified information, honestly, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I just want to quickly read one of the things. It says, time now, weather is favorable, just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch. And then it describes in detail what they are about to do. So clearly, these are war plans over and over and over again. Pete Hegseth has said these are not war plans. This is going to be a very difficult thing for the administration to deny at this point with this being published. Thank you so much, Brian Stelter. Stick around with us for a second. John?
All right, and we're furiously going through these texts right now to get a sense of what they are. I want to bring in our Chief National Security.
In the military, if someone did this, you'd be violating UCMJ, of course, but also Pete Hegseth. If you had that many openings as someone with alcoholism issues and as someone who was if you had been alleged to have raped somebody and there was a police report about it, they would never elevate a normal person and give them top security clearance, let alone even like low-level security clearance. So yes, when you are at that level, when you are a dick rider of Trump, they just kind of let you do it. Yes. It does not matter. None of this stuff matters. How could they plan out how to bomb the most civilians possible using Signal instead of a skiff? Yeah.
Security reporter Alex Marquardt. And Alex, what is striking is that some of the messages that were sent before the attack took place talked about which weapons, which aircrafts would be used, and what time the bombs would be dropped.
Yeah, and this all goes to the question of what are war plans, because the pushback that we have heard from the Trump administration and from Pete Hegseth specifically, who put the most detail in this chat, was these are not war plans. So that's what they're quibbling with. These are certainly strike plans because this is an extraordinary amount of detail. Now, The Atlantic is saying that they feel comfortable publishing this because of this repeated pushback from the administration, that what we are looking at is not classified. But I just want to reiterate what our colleague Brian Stelter said. If this is not classified, we don't know what is. This is some of the most valuable information when it comes to carrying out strikes that, in fact, the CIA Director John Ratcliffe said yesterday, this is the kind of stuff, these pre-strike deliberations should take place in classified channels. They did not. So not only do we have all kinds of information about what was going to happen, we now also have information about what happened afterwards, essentially a post-strike assessment report, which is not something that we had seen in the original report from Jeffrey Goldberg. All he had said was that Pete Hegseth, in the hours prior to this strike on the Houthis on March 15th, laid out operational details, timing, weaponry, etc. So a lot more details here. We have at 12:15, Pete Hegseth says the first launch of F-18s. And then in all caps, as he's laying out the timing of how this is going to go, he writes, this is when the first bomb.
What was the best way for Goldberg to have handled the situation, in your opinion? Never revealed that he actually has access to this data until he gets something that is so alarming that he writes about it. I think he just stays in the chat. If they don't recognize that he's in the chat, he just stays in the chat and he keeps logging for as long as he can. Or he reveals the plans instantly. That's espionage? No, it's not espionage. You want to know why it's not espionage? Because they fucked up. It's not like he snuck into the chat. They added him. What do you mean? You can't say something is espionage. Put me down? No, I will not be putting you down. I'm going to shake you a little bit too. Shouldn't this one action already be enough? Like in any other administration, I've seen this being a huge deal compared to now. No, nothing is a huge deal anymore. Would have been illegal for him to do this. He has an affirmative duty to let them know he fucked up. They fucked up, you mean, not he. I know what you're saying, but he can't just lay in wait. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about the affirmative duty in this situation. I don't think you guys understand. I am an unconditional supporter of Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, and many others. Okay? So you're not going to get me to go, yeah, he actually shouldn't gather as much intel as possible and then blow the whistle on all of it. What are you talking about? He's a journalist. The expectation from us as American citizens should not be to have journalists play ball with the State Department. Every single person, every single journalist should be inherently contentious towards the State Department. But because in the aftermath, especially of 9/11, this attitude has completely been shredded. That we don't even expect them to do journalism. We expect them to be good people that never violate any rules or laws. Like, what are you talking about? Virtually every big investigation from the Pentagon Papers all the way back to uncovering the massacres in Vietnam. Shouts out to Seymour Hersh for that. They were all actions that were inherently against the State Department's opinions and goals. And they were illegal, technically. Modern liberals have unironically forgotten about what journalism is supposed to be. Playing ball with an administration and playing ball with a government is not what journalism is. But of course, that's the reason why Mike Waltz, the freaking national security advisor to the Trump administration, has Jeffrey Goldberg's phone number to begin with. That's it. It is the heart of the problem with modern journalism. It is part of the reason why people don't trust journalists in general. And I talked about this yesterday. Hey, journalists here, the reality is if you add a journalist or invite them into a room, you open yourself up to getting reported on. It doesn't matter how they got there. For example, the reporter going into your bedroom and reporting on your phone call with your manager, it is part of the game. People in chat are dumb. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's free game, baby. What is a journalist supposed to do? Then they have their job is not to do journalism. Their job is to be a stenographer. And you're openly recognizing that. You're openly stating that you want journalists to be a stenographer of the State Department. Like, that's wild to me. I don't understand that at all. I tweeted about this yesterday, and people were kind of mad at me for that as well. I said, where is it? Jeffrey Goldberg refusing to dump all the text messages in the Houthi signal chat is exactly why the NatSec advisor had his personal phone number. It is precisely the problem with fake journalists and legacy publishers. They're stenographers of the State Department. This person says he hasn't dumped them yet. They're going to be pulled by Senate Intelligence Committee after testimony from everyone involved that no classified information was shared. It's not ideal for Twitch streaming, but sometimes it's better to be patient. It's like, this is not about Twitch streaming. Like, what? The expectation that you have to wait for the State Department to tell you what you are allowed to report is insane. You know? It's crazy to me. Sometimes it's better to be right than to be the first to post about it. What? They think you were wrong because they got published? Wait, what? People were mad at you for that. Your replies are very stupid. Yeah, always is Twitter. Twitter is very stupid. Wait for the State Department to censor potential info that shows how fucking dumb the admin is. A moron. Yeah, so here's the thing. What you're supposed to do in this situation is go to your legal team that knows what kind of information is not publishable, okay? You're supposed to black out certain pieces of information. Like, you can't... There's an argument to be made about not uncovering, like, CIA operatives, for example. If you ask me, I don't really care, but I understand why... you're not supposed to unmask active duty service members and put their lives in harm's way. It's a moral. There is also like a moral argument there as well in terms of like, do you want to be responsible for someone getting killed, right? Like, that's a thing that you have to think about. One of the best examples of this, of course, is the way that the now disgraced but formerly award-winning journalist Glenn Greenwald, and the way that he went about reporting on all of the information uncovered by Edward Snowden. Okay, like, there were plenty of parts of the Edward Snowden documents that were, of course, redacted. Same with Chelsea Manning. There's always going to be plenty of parts that will be redacted. Okay, now read your own tweet. What do you mean? I understand that part. Okay, I understand that. When I say dump all the text messages, I'm saying you can redact key aspects of it. Playing ball with the State Department and waiting for them to give you the go-ahead is not journalism. At no point am I saying you should wait for the State Department and get the go-ahead from the State Department. That is not journalism. The irony, of course, is that there are still parts of the text messages, from what I understand, if you get the go-ahead from the editor or the State Department, you don't get the Watergate leaks. Exactly. That's what I mean. Like, what are we talking about? Like, I think maybe a lot of people don't understand, like, the history of journalism in the United States of America or how it's supposed to work. And that's fine. That's okay. I mean, this is a big part of why I do what I do, where I try to explain to you media literacy and look at American media and Western media and media all around the world through a critical lens. And this is part of it. This is part of my job here. But so much reporting would just never be released if they waited on the State Department to give you the go-ahead, in which case that's not journalism at all. That's just, you're being, once again, a stenographer for the State Department. Whistleblowers are supposed to uncover truths that the government wants to hide. It's very interesting that people don't understand this. It's not Jeffrey Goldberg's job to maintain state security. His job is actually to sometimes violate state security. His job is directly supposed to be adversarial to every single person that's in that group chat. You're not supposed to play ball with them, ever. If you are playing ball with them, that means you're not doing journalism. You're doing the opposite. That's why I say he is a stenographer for the State Department rather than one who is directly at odds with it, which is precisely the reason why this conversation now is on the aesthetics and the the silliness of the administration and not necessarily the actions that were being taken here.
Bombs will definitely drop. That is extraordinarily sensitive information. And the point that we have been making and that Jeffrey Goldberg and his colleague Shane Harris make in this report is, if it were not Goldberg in this chat, if it were someone else who could have shared this information with the Houthis, with other adversaries, they would have had access to an extraordinary level of detail about what was just going to happen. But I really do want to highlight some of the new information that we got here about what happened in the wake of this strike, because what we had understood was that Pete Hegseth and perhaps John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, that they had put the most sensitive information into this group chat. Here we have Mike Waltz, the national security advisor. He's also adding some extraordinarily sensitive information into this chat because he gives the group a sense of what happened in the aftermath. He writes that a building collapsed. He actually said that specifically to J.D. Vance, the vice president. He talks about this building collapsing, the fact that they were able to kill what he called the top missile guy who was walking to his girlfriend's building, and it has now collapsed. So this is an after-action report from the National Security Advisor. He praises the intelligence community. He praises Pete Carilla, the head of Central Command. So this is just, again, a remarkable...
How can people see the state media as a sign of totalitarianism and want the State Department stamp on all information? I know. It's like people talk about the restrictions placed upon free press in China, and then without a shred of irony will unironically say we need to implement similar structures here in the United States of America. And it's like, how are you? No, I want journalists to operate freely and be adversarial both in China and also in the United States of America. Like, what are we talking about? It's very important. Like, why are we waiting for the stamp of approval from the state for journalists to do their job? If that was the case in every single story, there would be so much information that you'll never get access to. Required reading in journalism school should legit be manufacturing consent. Changed my whole perspective on how I work after I read it. Yeah.
Level of detail. We have heard in the past 24 hours the Trump administration sticking to their guns, saying that none of this is classified information, but that they don't want it out there because they don't want, as Carolyn Levitt said, internal and private deliberations amongst high-level senior staff to be put out there. They objected to this release, but we now have much fuller detail in terms of what was in these text messages on this Signal chat. And of course, guys, this comes just an...
Especially this administration, you have no duty to defend them. You, as a matter of fact, I would say, have a duty not to defend them, to constantly present yourself as an adversary. If you are a journalist who cares about this job, who cares about the future of journalism, who cares about the future of democracy, theoretical or in practice, you have a duty not to work with this government and to do the exact opposite. It's crazy. There is nothing, no holds barred. It's crazy to me that people still maintain this notion that, like, you have to make sure that the information is that you're presented with due to the ineptitude of this administration is one that you have to get additional stamps of approval from the state from. Like, get the fuck out of here. How is that any different than like having a military censor like in the IDF carefully go through everything that you are releasing? Then it's not real journalism in that point.
An hour and 15 minutes before these intelligence officials are supposed to sit down again in front of an intelligence committee on Capitol Hill.
This is when the first bombs will definitely drop. Again, an extraordinary level of detail on a text exchange before the actual bombs drop. And one point I want to reiterate here is that while Pete Hegseth and others say this was not classified information, that might be semantic only because Pete Hegseth himself can't even retroactively say information was not classified. Alex Marquardt, thank you for that reporting.
Let's get to Jeff Zeleny, who is at the White House for us. Jeff, these are extraordinary text messages that a reporter was added into this group. Mike Waltz saying it was a mistake. How is the Trump administration and the Trump White House going to explain this? And are you hearing anything from them? Because they have been standing by all of the members of this group, including the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth.
Look, Sarah, as you were just saying there, we're getting an extraordinary minute-by-minute look at some of those messages now that the Atlantic has published. In the wake of the president's and others' assistance yesterday, there was no classified information in these, but we're also getting a peek behind what led to the publishing of these. The Atlantic, we're told, as they're writing in the magazine this morning, that they alerted the White House and other national security agencies and said that they did plan to publish and ask if there were any objections. So the White House press secretary is pushing back again this morning, a very familiar page from the Trump playbook, and again attacking the Atlantic, calling it a hoax, going after...
They should all be sucking up to the Atlantic, you know what I mean, for not immediately leaking this information, which they should have, in my opinion. Like, he should be kissing Goldberg's feet for not immediately verifying whether or not this group chat was had any veracity. Like, that's another thing. Jeff Goldberg being like, oh, I thought it was a joke. Like, dude, what is wrong with you? You are the editor-in-chief of a prominent legacy media publisher, and you didn't, like, you had this incredible scoop dropped on your feet, okay, placed upon you on a silver platter, and you didn't investigate further. You didn't, like, try to see if these numbers were actually the numbers of the people that you were in the group chat of, to figure out whether or not this was a real conversation taking place, and then instantly report on it. Every part of the story frustrates me as someone who does a lot of media criticism, okay? Like, it's insane to me that he was just like, oh, I was in the group chat, and I was like, oh, this is a funny meme. Like, you're not a random guy. You're not a random guy. You should know better. And then he left the group chat, too. He was like, I'll see myself out. Peace, boys. Every part of this is so frustrating. Him saying he thought it was a joke is a lie, bro. Yeah, I'm willing to bet that is a lie, yes.
Some long-held grievances that the president has held with Jeffrey Goldberg, who's been the author of several pieces over the years that the president has not liked. But the White House press secretary is also going after a Wall Street Journal editorial this morning that is taking a specific look at Steve Witkoff. He, of course, is one of the president's close friends, who's a Middle East envoy. He was meeting with Vladimir Putin on March 13th, at the time that all these conversations and signal messages were going on. But the White House is pushing back and saying he was not using his personal phone while he was in Moscow. He was using a government phone when he returned back. But the actual substance of this, so this is what certainly will be shined a light on at the House hearing that is now scheduled to begin in just a little over an hour. The very specific details of these wartime plans from the weather conditions for the bombs are about to drop. So again, as we saw yesterday, the light was shining on the defense secretary. We saw the director of national intelligence and the CIA director saying it was up to the defense secretary to answer questions if these were indeed the classified war plans. And now we can see for ourselves very operational.
I'm a fan, but why'd you use a rare opportunity to noticeably call out Elon Musk's corruption and racism to invite him to collab and game with you instead? Why do you want to collab with a Nazi? As a fan, I think you should probably understand that if he were to come on this stream, it would not be to simply collaborate and have a tickle party. I think that's just like me saying, like, come on the stream. Are you okay? Like, do you think that if Elon Musk came on the broadcast that I wouldn't use that as an opportunity to ask him some serious pointed questions? You think I would you think I would just like have fun with him, like, and talk about how wonderful he is? Perhaps you should ask yourself how you arrived at such an unimaginably uncharitable and perhaps stupid opinion of me, you know? Ask yourself that. It's just, negative critical thinking skills all the way down, I think. Wow, Donald Trump wants to come on your stream. Seems like you want to platform Donald Trump. Sweetie, have you thought about the repercussions of platforming the president or platforming the shadow president? Also, it's so funny because like Elon Musk, despite his endless stupidity, also understands that invitation is simply bait and didn't bite it. But that chatter personally thinks I love Elon Musk now. What a strange way to approach this issue. Anyway, let's continue.
Details there that certainly are now giving new fodder for more questions. So the White House was thinking yesterday, was hoping that they were going to put this behind them, at least the political fallout from this. And they're trying to make it into a political scandal, not a national security controversy. We shall see how successful they are in doing that. But now having all of these plans in front of us, it certainly looks like minute by minute by minute what was about to happen. Certainly seems like war plans and war planning to anyone who's reading it.
Latest fallout from the national security breach in the Trump administration. A reporter mistakenly invited to a group chat about an attack on Yemen on a widely available messaging app.
And top intelligence officials face questions, as you can imagine, on Capitol Hill as the president defended his national security advisor. Our chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz, has the latest for us. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, Robin. This morning, all eyes once again on the White House. This has been an extraordinary 24 hours with the president and some of his most senior cabinet officials trying to brush off this story by attacking the reporter Jeffrey Goldberg. But Goldberg did not seek out this explosive story. He was handed it.
Yeah, the media intrigue side of the story is actually shocking. Like, I haven't heard anyone from any serious news publication turn around and say, it's kind of odd that he didn't reveal this information immediately. As a matter of fact, they keep celebrating the fact that it was actually Jeffrey Goldberg and not some other scary person, like a person who would do real reporting on the matter. It just strikes me as so strange because, like, it almost feels like the media, all of these, like, legacy publishers are unironically praising Goldberg for doing something that their jobs require him not to do, for doing the opposite of what he was supposed to do in that process. It's very strange. It's very, very strange. I don't know.
This morning, The Atlantic calling the Trump administration's bluff, publishing the entire text chain between the administration's national security team on the operational plan for this month's U.S. attack on Iranian-backed Houthis. A new article from editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg shared the detailed text from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, sending the group a rundown of the operation from the time F-18 fighter jets would launch to when the first bombs would drop and the time Tomahawk missiles would launch. The Atlantic also publishing most of the names of the people included in the chat. This morning, the White House doubling down on claims these were not war plans. President Trump's national security team on the defensive, with Democrats now calling for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's resignation. The secretary trying to deflect any blame and downplay that extraordinary security breach, where Hegseth reportedly shared highly sensitive operational plans in a group chat about this month's U.S. attack on Iranian-backed Houthis.
Nobody's texting more plans. I know exactly what I'm...
Sorry to bother you, but will you cover the kidnapping of a Turkish PhD student by ICE? No. I will not. I refuse to. What do you think? Do you think it's on the docket? Yes. The answer is yes.
Doing exactly what we're directing, and I'm really proud of what we accomplished, the successful missions that night and going forward.
Just hours earlier, President Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, saying the blame lies with him.
I take full responsibility. I built the group.
In the White House with President Trump, Waltz unable to explain how journalist Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic was invited into the chat group where war plans were laid out.
I've never met, don't know, never communicated with, and we are...
How did his phone number get in your phone, big dog? How'd that happen? How? You know? Important questions. Now, we're going to watch Laura Ingraham on Fox News ask some of these questions of Mike Waltz. And it's actually interesting because, like, Laura Ingraham, ironically enough, despite being a government stooge and state media, actually asks him some pointed questions. It's interesting where she does, like, kind of some journalism, surprisingly enough.
And we are looking into and reviewing how the heck he got into this room.
President Trump last night in an interview with Newsmax with his own theory.
What it was, we believe, is somebody that was on the line with permission.
Michael Waltz claimed that he's never met, don't know, never communicated with Jeffrey Goldberg. Here's a photo of Waltz standing next to Goldberg during a 2021 event at the French embassy. The event Waltz attended, a Q&A with French filmmaker, was moderated by Goldberg. He's right behind him, dude. It's like Elon being like, I've never seen Ghislaine Maxwell. I've never heard of Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't even know what she is. I don't know what she does. I have no idea what she's about to do. Never seen her.
Somebody that was with Mike Waltz, worked for Mike Waltz at a lower level, had, I guess, Goldberg's number.
Cool. This is also funny. Okay, this is also pretty funny because even Waltz hasn't gotten his story straight. Like when this came out, and they had like what 2 days now, the immediate goal should be to find a coherent narrative and stick to it. And because they are so incredibly incompetent, they can't even get a consistent narrative here. And the part of this that I don't see a lot of people talk about is this. This is illegal. You cannot have disappearing messages in 4 weeks when it's the Principals Committee having private correspondence over classified war plans. You can't talk about striking a foreign nation, which, by the way, still at a certain point in time required congressional approval. Okay, we are so far past that point. I'm not even going to get into it because they're declared a terrorist organization, so you can do whatever you want, and there's no congressional approval necessary. But like at a certain point in time, this would be the main conversation. They'd be like, what do you mean you're using American military without congressional approval to strike foreign countries? That seems insane. That seems illegal because it was, and it still should be. But we're not even having that conversation. And also, they're not even having this conversation. What is going on? It's wild how the standards have shifted so dramatically. They're gone. It's eroded. There's nothing. There's no oversight whatsoever. You got a bunch of dudes in a group chat with their personal phones with disappearing messages going, yeah, we should strike this place next. Yeah, hell yeah. I didn't even look to see who else was in this group chat. I'm sure it's fine. It's copacetic. Let's go. It's incredible.
Were called through the app, and somehow this guy ended up on the...
Couldn't they argue it's the same as a phone call? No. Okay? Because, again, phone calls like this are supposed to be done with... are supposed to be documented. Okay? You can't do that on a phone call either. You're not... Like, there are places where you can do this sort of... there are places where you can have this sort of back and forth, this sort of communication through a secure line with all of the conversation being documented. You can't just do it via text message. What do you mean? You might as well tweet it out, you know? Hey, man, let's just have this convo in broad daylight on Twitter. Let's have this back and forth on Twitter. We'll do a Twitter comms for it. It's ironic because there are chatters in this community that have security clearances. They all know that if they were to do something a fraction, if they were to do something that is like a fraction as bad as what these guys did, they would be put in prison. They would lose their security clearance, they would lose their job, and perhaps they would be facing prison time. Because for normal people, you go to jail for this. This is not just like a minor violation. This is a major violation.
Goldberg says it was Waltz himself who added him to the chat on the app Signal, where he says he saw texts from Hegseth that laid out specific war plans, saying the plan included precise information about weapons packages, targets, and timing.
There was no classified information, as I understand it. They used a app, if you want to call it an app, that a lot of people use, a lot of people in government use, a lot of people in the media use.
Signal is an encrypted commercial messaging app, but it's not clear to transmit classified information or presumably highly sensitive war plans.
Yeah, here's the video. A leaked private training video from ProPublica that uncovered the. Hold on. How do I?
Yeah, so that's where things get really tricky.